You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you SPIKES volatility products. SPIKES options and futures are traded on the SPIKES Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about SPIKES at myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Friday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's going on in the world of vol? Well, let's find out together. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. So, as of course, from the ever-exciting, at least we think so, Options Insider Radio Network, a legion, a plethora of ways for you guys to get this content. Many of you enjoying it, of course, on demand on your podcast platform of choice. You'll be pleased to know there are more of those pretty much every week. It seems like I can't even keep up with how many new platforms there are out there, let alone you folks out there. So if there's an on-demand platform, chances are we're up there, or if not, it'll be coming soon. They pretty much add most of them automatically these days. Of course, if you want the full kit and caboodle, all the archives, our website, or of course our mobile app are the two best places to go. There's no barriers or impediments there. You can get everything pretty much at the push of a button, as opposed to some other venues where they might limit you to the most recent 50 episodes or something like that. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, get the live, as well as come back later today for Options Oddities. Come in on Tuesdays for our pro Q&As and get registered. Last couple of days here for the Pro Trader Crate. All kinds of cool stuff. I'm looking at a stack of stuff against the wall over here that we need to sort out and put into different crates. So all kinds of cool stuff. That's only for the pro folks. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. And of course, if you have questions, keep sending them over. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the program today. First off, going back out to the volatility mecca known as Tejas. We are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com by way of Carmen Line Capital. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the program, A. And B, is that a young Dwight Schrute that I'm looking at here in our show chat?
Yeah, I sent you a picture of little Mark. He's dressed as Dwight Schrute. I'm gonna one of my costumes is Michael Scott, and I'll send you a picture of my other costume here in a second. I think you're gonna like it.
I like it. You guys are going all out.
But yeah,
my little guy wasn't that interested. He picked a hot dog this year. I was like, really? A hot dog? He picked an ironic costume. I was like, seriously? That's what you're picking? Cased meats But c'est la vie. I guess that's what.
Well, he's a kid. He's a big hot dog.
That's true. He is a big hot dog.
He is meepy in the hot dog.
He was towering over the other folks at the Halloween parade that I had to drag out to early this morning. Good times nonetheless. Hopefully we have some good weather here in Chi-Town for a little bit of trick-or-treating later today. And, of course, joining us, beaming over from across the pond for the second time in a week. I don't know if that's ever happened before. And joining us via the magic of modern technology as well, which is always funny. Sounds like he's right next to me in the room here. Mr. Simon Ho, the CEO of T3 Index, a.k.a. the Spikes father himself. Mr. Simon, welcome back to Volatility Views, sir. It has been too long.
Thank you very much. Second show in a week with you, so that's great news.
I'm getting distracted by all these costume pictures that the meatball is sending us here. So aren't you glad you're on the show chat now? You can see all this stuff live with me, Simon. It's just making your day here as we keep on rolling right on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review. Looks like Meatball's going to be Ted Lasso. You know, in my head, Mark, I see you more as like an evil Coach Nate. What do you think?
Oh, I could be an evil Coach Nate. That would be good.
Of course, spoilers.
I can't believe they turned that guy evil.
Spoilers.
I'm a fan. I like that.
It was kind of fun, and you could see him slowly progressing to the dark side, so it did make it kind of fun. And everyone can't be a ray of sunshine on that show. You got to have a few evil ones. So, yeah, you as Ted Lasso, interesting. I will say this. I think Ted Lasso has done the most since Magnum PI to bring back the stash. What do you think?
I love it. You know, I'm doing Bloomberg later, and they told me I'm not allowed to wear a costume. So I had to change. Not happy. not happy
cool
at all.
That's not cool at all. I saw a bunch of little kids rocking stashes today being Ted Lasso. So apparently this has permeated with all ages out there. Ted Lasso. I don't know. Simon, has the Ted Lasso phenomenon, has it caught on there in Australia as well?
Not really, no. I'm afraid not. It'd be good, but no.
Not yet. Hasn't made it over there to the Commonwealth yet. Let's see what has made it over in terms of vol. This is another reason why vol views in particular, you can't really plan for it too much ahead of time because the worm tends to turn. Coming into this, most of the start of the session, it seemed like we were going to be looking at pretty much a red day. It does seem like the markets have pivoted ever so slightly into the green now. The NASDAQ is pretty much a little bit more than unched to the upside. S&P up about 0.1%. Dow up about 0.2%. That means all of our vol products, we're looking up pretty firmly. They're still up a little bit coming into showtime. Spikes, when we kicked off the show, is at about a 17.25. That puts it up about 1.5 points from where it was this time last week. VIX cash was at about a 16.5, a little bit shy of that now. It's up. That was up about a point when we kicked off the show. And good old VVIX, aka the vol of vol, at about 105.5, down a little bit, down about 4.5 points from this time last week. And Mr. Simon, it's been a while since you've joined us here in the MIAX hot seat. So let's kick it off while you're catching up on Ted Lasso, sir. What has been lighting up your tape from a volatility perspective?
Certainly, we've been impressed with how things have gone recently. So, as you know, this has been a fairly long journey for us at MIAX and with the Spikes product. But we're really pleased about the fact that we're getting so much attention and that volumes are sort of soaring. So it's finally sort of coming together, as it were. And recently we had a monthly volume of over 180,000 futures, which is certainly not de minimis. And we're getting the quality of the markets has also improved significantly. So these are milestones that obviously we're very proud of and taken quite some time to get here, but the associated things that are also positive as a result of that is that the prices on the bid offer spread on options, for example, are also tightening massively. So lots of good stories to sort of talk about, and also the famous Viking index is up and running as of this week. So we might want to go into that detail.
All right, you're getting Mark excited. We're going to get to all that in a second. We're going to leave that as a little bit of a tease hanging out there. First, let's go back out there to the land of soccer known as Texas, what they call football across the pond there. Mr. Meatball, when you're not busy playing the old footy, what's been lighting up your tape from a vol perspective, sir?
Yeah, VIX is really interesting right now, and vol for that matter. And we've gotten a nice drop in vol of vol. And I think that's an important thing to be aware of. And yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating what's been happening with the VIX itself, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that we could be heading for a sub 14, both spikes and VIX. And vol is falling off. SKEW is falling off. They're buying less and less SKEW. I mean, a lot less. And that is definitely having an effect on things. So I think that's really the key here.
Let's see what effect that is having. And, since you threw it out there, Simon, let's get there first. I did just mention VVIX, which is, of course, the volatility of VIX itself. We have talked many times. You guys have been crunching away diligently behind the scenes. I mean, everyone's teased it. You've teased it. Shelley has teased it. John, when he's been on. It's been forever that we've been teasing it. Of course, the VSPIKES, what we know colloquially around these parts as the Viking. But as you mentioned, Mr. Simon, it is finally here. VSPIKES is finally live. We finally have our measure of spikes volatility. Why don't you break it down for our audience? What are we talking about here? How are you crunching these numbers? And what level are we at right now, sir?
Right, yeah, so that's a good question. So VSPIKES has taken some time to come.
The Viking.
Yeah, sorry, the Viking, sorry. It's going to take me a long time to get over that. So, yeah, so it has taken us a long time to get to where we want to be, but we're very pleased. So recently, we are disseminating this it goes via Oprah. I think it is actually on a number of different platforms, including Yahoo, for those who don't really have the professional stuff. But so basically, you can see VSPIKE. So VSPIKE is essentially, I'm just going to get in trouble from Mr. Meatball for that all day. But essentially, yes. We have a measure that is kind of similar to the VVIX, as in a volatility metric of the vol itself, which we call VSPIKES. And basically, it's quite different in terms of its design than VIX, and we feel as though we have addressed a flaw that that technically is a flaw in the VVIX. And essentially, what we're doing here is we've used a mechanism that is equally weighted as opposed to a variance swap. So for the actual underlying VIX index, it makes sense to use the traditional weighting. But when it comes to something like a vol measure, that isn't actually appropriate. So we've done a different weighting scale rather than weighting the downside, which in a vol measure doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What we're doing here is we're using equivalent weights for each of the strikes. So that gives us what we believe to be a more accurate barometer of what the vol is. So the difference between them is actually quite considerable. So I had a look yesterday, and I think it was in the order of 30 points. So, we had a VSPIKES of about 130, and the VIX was, say 109, the VVIX, sorry. So you can see that those are substantially different, and their behaviors are somewhat different. And, as I said, we believe that ours is a more accurate version of it. So it's taken a long time to get here, but finally it's being published. It updates every 1 second, and it can be got at most of the places that you would go to see this kind of stuff.
You got to update the MIAX options page so we can have VSPIKES on there as well, sir. I'm looking right now. I don't see it up there yet, so we need to get some VSPIKES action up there. But I know you've been crunching this for a while, working on it for a while. We were talking about VVIX a lot during the height of the pandemic, how it shot up into triple digits and pretty much never got below 120 until not that long ago, a few months ago, really, when it broke that again. Did you see a similar trend in VSPIKES, and what kind of levels were we talking about during the height of the madness, and what was the floor out there for most of the pandemic?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, especially in the period where all of the bad stuff was happening, as it were, or jumps in spikes and VIX, you could easily find 30 plus point differential between them, as in the V spikes was higher by about 30 plus points. So it makes a huge difference to what you're expecting based on what we're used to seeing with the VVIX.
And Mr. Meatball, this is the day you have been eagerly anticipating for many, many months now. How excited are you to finally have a VSPIKES/Vikings to sink your teeth into, sir?
I'm a huge fan. I could not be more excited for the VSPIKES finally joining the party. We've been waiting, and now we are here. I could not be happier. Congrats to MIAX and all involved on what is a wonderful product with a brilliant name, in which I'm waiting for my royalty checks.
That's what he really cares about. He cares about the royalty checks.
Correct.
All else is secondary. But it's always fun to have more analytics, more things to weigh and measure here and discuss on the shows. I'm looking forward to putting the VSPIKE/Viking into the rotation. But you also mentioned at the top of the show, Simon, they've been working hard behind the scenes to drum up some action out there in the land of spikes futures. That does seem to be paying dividends. Matt McFarland sending out some news before showtime. More records out there in spikes futures. This time actually on our last show day, last Friday, set a new record in the futures with nearly 23,000 contracts on the tape. So pretty impressive stuff. They're also talking about the market quality out there, seeing tighter markets in the futures, and as a result, tighter markets in the options. So, Simon, what's been lighting up your tape out there in the realm of spikes futures lately, sir?
Yeah, so we're very pleased about this. This is probably the highlight for us at this point, I suppose. So you mentioned the daily record, which is about 23,000. And if you look at a monthly record that we have, it's well over 180,000 futures. So obviously we're stoked about it. I mean, that's really, really very good progress from about. So we have a zero fee exchange program. Obviously, we're a newcomer. We need to sort of sell ourselves and to differentiate ourselves from others. So one of the things that we decided to do was to have zero fees, and it's been that way all year. And for the foreseeable future, we think that is the case as well. So this has helped us to welcome a bunch of new customers who want to come in and trade spikes futures, and we couldn't be more happy. I mean, it's been a long slog, but we're certainly starting to see some rewards for all of the effort that's gone in, and also it doesn't hurt that you've got zero exchange fees as well.
Indeed. Let's get on out now to the other vol surface, the VIX futures curve. Coming into the start of the show, we saw a little bit of evolution, not a ton out there in the front portion of the curve. Obviously, the October future off the board now, no future there. The front month, that's off a little over half a point when we kicked off the show, about 0.6 of a point. And the D's future was mostly unched off about 1/10 of a point. It's not a heck of a lot of evolution over there. Mr. Meatball, anything catching your eye in the land of VIX futures over the course of the past week, sir?
Yeah, term structure has really tightened up. Leading after VIX expiration last week, the November future was, and spikes was the same structure, right? About 4 points above the cash index. That has squeezed back down to less than 3. There's still a really nice, really steep contango. I would also note that December actually got a little bit stronger. There's no longer like that seasonality kink in the December future as there was for months and months and months and months. And then the back end of the curve is super flat. The spread between month 5, which is March, all the way out to next July is only about 80 cents. You can sell July vol at 25 if you want to be short a future for the next 8 months. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Who wouldn't want to do such a thing? Indeed. And people are trading out there in the world of volatility options, though. So let's head out there next. On our last show, we were talking about spikes options, a lot of the October rolling off the board. And actually, a big print went up in spikes options not that long before showtime last week as well. So we are starting to see some repopulating. The OI had dropped from about 10,000 down to 2,000. Now it's back up to about 8,000 out there in Spikes options. So seeing some decent paper, including another return of another three-way. Everyone loves the multi-leg spreads out there. In Spikes options last week, it was the Nova 20 puts going up for 235. Paper buying those. Looks like selling the Nova 22-27 vertical against that, selling that net for about 50 cents. So they bought that put for about $1.85 out there, which again, given the flow of the paper we've seen out there, not surprising that they'd be fading a little bit of downside there in Spikes and using some of the upside to pay for it. So now the top positions are that vertical pretty much, the Nova 20 puts, the Nova 22 calls, and the Nova 27 calls, all with about 2,000 each out there in Spikes options. Simon, is that kind of the trade that came across your radar this week as well? Or are there other trades that you've been noticing out there in Spikes options of late, sir?
No, that seems to be the most common trade, actually. It's that three-way that you talked about seems to be fairly recurrent. So, but of course, that's an area that we need to improve upon. I think the bid-offer spread there has tightened considerably. We've got some really high-quality market makers that have joined us to help price Spikes options. But this is definitely something that that is a focal point for us going forward, because futures I think are doing well enough, but the options is something we need to pay attention to.
Well, they're starting to roll out there as the futures tighten up. The options will be growing. Let's see what's going on out there in the realm of VIX options today. A decently active day, all things considered, but it's actually been pretty light out there most of the week. So today actually looks pretty busy by comparison. 172,000 contracts on the tape as of a few minutes ago. The ADV also ticking down since our last show, down to about 416,000. That's actually down about another 30,000. So yeah, down to about 416 out there right now. Let's break down the top 10 positions out there in VIX land. Cost you 109,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX options. By the way, VIX options top 10, exactly 50-50 puts to calls. That's kind of interesting. Haven't seen that in a little while. Maybe perhaps reflecting where we were earlier in the week, where we were starting to maybe get to that lower portion of VIX where people are actually intrigued by calls again. Either way, 50-50. Read into that what you will out there. Number 10 in the top sizable positions out there in VIX land right now, 109,000 of the DEES 40 calls. Number 8, we have 113,000 of the Feb 65s. That was number 9. Number 8, 129,000 of the DEES 30s. Number 7, $132 of the Nov 20 calls. Number 6, 133,000 of the November 18 puts. Number 5, our fifth and final call in the top 5 here, $144 of the Nov 60s, my much beloved Nov 60s out there. And the rest all puts all the time. Listeners, number 4, $161 of the DEES 17 puts. Number 3, 193,000 of the November 16 puts. Number 2, 198,000 of the Nov 17 puts. And number 1 with a decent sized bullet out there, 300,000 almost exactly of the Nov 15 puts. In terms of the action on the tape today, like I said, not a ton, but there are some pockets of action, including 31, almost 32,000 of the DEES 95s trading for size out there again today. So they always like to throw a curveball. Today, it's pretty much a good chunk of the DEES 95s going up, followed by number 2, a distant number 2, 12,000 of the DEES 35s. Number 3, 8,000 of the Nov 17 puts. Number 4, 7,800 of the Nov 15 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a decently active day today, 7,500 of the Nov 20s. Yesterday, even less paper on the tape, 136,000 of the most active contracts, 11,000 of the Nov 22s, 11,000 as well of the Nov 19 puts, almost 11,000 of the Nov 45 calls. Number 4, 10K of the Nov 17 puts, and then number 5, 6,000 of the Nov 15 puts. Wednesday, similar paper to today, 185,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract, 15,000 of the Nov 27 calls. Number 2, 13,500 of the Nov 18 puts. Number 3, 11,000 of the DEES 35s, back up to upside in December. Not quite the 95s, though. Number 4, 9,000 almost exactly of the March doubles, the March 55 calls. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, 5,500 of the Nov 25 calls. Tuesday, the most active day of the week, at least so far, 592,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog on Tuesday, 97,000 of the Nov 17 puts, followed by about 62,000 of the Nov 18 puts. Number 3, 57,000 of the Nov 16 puts. Nice little juicy put strip going up there. Number 4, 50,000 almost exactly. 50,022 to be precise, of the June. Haven't seen a lot of June here. June 65s. There's some interesting paper afoot these days. And number 5, 36,000 of the Nov 19 puts. Monday, kind of split in the middle there. Not super active, not super quiet either. 304,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract on Monday, 38,000 of the Nov 16 puts, followed by 18,000 for number 2 of the D17 puts. Number 3, 15K of the D19 puts. Number 4, back up to those interesting upside strikes in December, 15,000 of the D90s. And rounding out the top 5 this week, 13,000 of the Nov 21 calls. Mr. Meatball, any of these prints catching your eye out here this week? And our audience dearly wants to know, how many Ds, 90s, and 95s did you buy this week, sir?
That wasn't me, but what I would point out is the open interest on the November 15 puts. This is a 10-cent option, and there's 300,000 of them open. I've been watching traders buy these up in big scoops over the last week. I believe that is the largest open interest strike in all of VIX. And we also have a lot of activity on the 16s and 17s as well. Those have been very active. Some of the other kind of big trades that we've seen have been, like you said, some of those way out of the money calls, some pretty decent activity there. But, I'd like to see vol drop further. And, a lot of the paper that we're seeing has me wondering whether we're going to make a run at a sub 15 VIX here, potentially post non-farms next week. Now that we're through earnings, I'm not sure what is holding volatility back, right? I mean, this SKEW, and Simon, your next project is to develop a serviceable real-time SKEW index that we can all talk about constantly instead of the stagnant one by SEBO that MIAX can put out. But SKEW, as measured by the SKEW index, has fallen from consistently into the 160s back to more normal levels. And if we continue to rally and SKEW doesn't get a pop, we don't see out of the money players, then we're going to see the VIX. And I think we could get to sub 14 in the next couple of weeks.
So Simon, when is that SKEW index coming? I know you got the crypto SKEW. You were talking bit SKEW earlier this week. So we know you have a methodology down, sir. When are we going to see that applied to spikes? Sir? Just push the button. Just flip the switch. That's all you got to do, right?
Well, I'm glad you asked. At the moment, it's disseminating. We actually do have a SKEW index ourselves. It's actually an SPY Smile index, we call it. So Smile, SKEW, same thing, but we wanted to slightly differentiate. But if you go onto t3index.com, you can find in there under the indices section where you've got spikes, you can see the SPY Smile index. So, Mr. Meatball, I have anticipated your every need, and it is actually up there, up and running now. It's not quite yet live, so it's a daily one, but you can see the history going all the way back to November of 20. So you'll have a very good indication here of what it looks like on the SKEW.
All right, well, get that thing live,
yep.
And then Mark and I will rejoice. We'll have you back on. I'll send you a bouquet of flowers to thank you, and so will our audience.
Fantastic, done.
Simon, he lives to serve. I'm looking at the Smile chart now, listeners. You can find it for yourselves at T3, and just the number 3 index.com. Go into the indices section, and you'll see on the right side there, SPY Smile. Interesting stuff, Simon, because we've been talking for a while about how elevated S&P index SKEW was here. But your Smile index looks like it started coming off pretty markedly. It peaked recently around September 3rd, about 140.5, and was actually selling off quite a bit. Getting into early October 4th, it kind of bottomed out around 120 and was hanging there until not too long ago. So interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth into this. Looks like your Smile index, Simon, it topped out on June 25th of this year, actually, at 143.81. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what was driving the SKEW back in June 23rd. But interesting stuff here, Simon. I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth into this more, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. And like I said, we will move to make this real time as soon as we can. So that'll be
yeah. Simon, obviously, I'm guessing this is not way out of the money, tiny baby crash protection puts. What's your methodology? Calls versus puts, puts and calls relative to at the money. What's the 10,000 foot methodology here?
Yeah, sure. So this is a reasonably complicated thing, but essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the entire SKEW, and again we equally weight the strikes, and so it gives you essentially what this is meant to do is to give folks a good indicator of how risky the market is. So we all know that downside puts are the things that go up a lot when market gets frightened or for whatever reason, or volatility rises. And so having a SMILE index basically gives you a sense of how risky the downside is. And so the more you know about that, obviously that's going to help traders to sort of adjust their thoughts about what the market is doing. So SMILE is really just another way to indicate volatility skew. And you're looking at how skewed the market is, and the more skewed it is, the more vulnerable, I suppose, the market appears to be. So that's basically the utility of having something like this.
Simon, I know we talked about this on Monday when we were talking about the bit skew, but obviously one of my bugbears with the SKEW index is that it takes all of these moving parts and it condenses them into one number. It doesn't really tell you what's driving that change in that one number. Have you thought about doing the SMILE index, but then also maybe pulling out a separate put SKEW index and a call SKEW index so the super hardcore can dig into those as well?
Giving me more work to do. Yes, absolutely.
You can't come on here without homework, Simon. What's the fun of that?
Yeah, you could definitely break it down like that. Yes, this is obviously something that is in aggregate, so it looks at the entire surface. So that is something that's useful. But yeah, absolutely, you could certainly put together something that was defined either to the upside or the downside. So yep, I can take a look at that for sure. And
did you consciously make it so the numbers kind of line up with the SKEW index, or is that just serendipity how it worked out on yours as well, that it kind of tops out at 150 and it hovers north of 100 most of the time?
No, to be fair, I didn't even look at the other one. So I didn't even know that they were that similar. So literally...
That's just how the SKEW numbers fall, it seems like these days. Everyone likes to top out at 150. Just the way the cookie crumbles out there. So check it out, listeners. T3 index, and click on through. You'll see on the SPIKES side, you see a bunch of different stuff, and one of them is the SPY SMILE, currently at 129.5 out there. Interesting stuff. Let's keep on rolling into some of the products you folks love to fade. Let's see. Coming into showtime, we had VXX at a little bit shy of 21.5, about 21.40. It puts it down about a third of a point from where it was this time last week. Decent paper on the tape today, but nothing to write home about. 124,000 contracts as of a few minutes ago. The ADV also ticking down a little bit, down to about 216 out there. That's actually off 30-odd thousand contracts from this time last week. Let's break down a quick top 10 out here in VXX land. By the way, 60-40 puts to calls in the top 10 in VXX. So puts still leading the dance, but only slightly in the top 10 out there. Cost you 14,800 contracts to break into the top 10 in VXX. That gets you to the NOV 30s, number 9, 15K of our Jan 3 puts in 2023. You know those are VXX1. Number 8, 15,000 as well of the NOV 23 puts. Number 7, 16K of the DEES 30 calls. Number 6, 17,000 of the NOV 21 calls. Number 5, our second and final pre-split adjusted name, the Jan 12 puts expiring this January 2022. And then number 4, 20,000 of the NOV 21 puts. Number 3, 21K of the OC 46 calls. Interesting. Number 2, 21,000 as well of the NOV 20 puts. And rounding out the top 10 in VXX this week, 25,000 of the NOV 18 puts. In terms of what's going up today, we've got the NOV expiring next week. So the 5th, 22 calls leading the tape today with about 11,500 contracts, followed by about 7,000 of the October 21 puts going out today. So these are in the weeklies, followed by, it looks like everything else is going out today, 6,000 of the OC 22 calls, 5,300 of the 21 halves, and 4,300 of the 22 puts. Mr. Meatball, sir, when you're not busy gluing on the fake stash, what's been lighting up your tape out there in VXX, sir?
Yeah, it touched an all-time low intraday a couple of days back, and then has kind of bounced and wafted and sat here for a bit. It's got a surprising amount of volume, and the amount, 10 years in, the amount of times I have to explain what's the difference between VIX and VXX still astounds me. That is the one comment I would make on the day today.
Is that more? Get to answer that more these days than how come I can't just buy the VIX itself? I can't buy VIX cash. That's still
yes.
That's usually
for sure.
Really, the VXX has usurped that. Wow, that's saying quite a bit. That means VXX moving on up in the Jefferson's parlance, actually stealing some more mind share out there. Oh, speaking of products, really quickly, and things that move sometimes in inverse relationships out there. Simon, you're a product guy. We haven't had you on since the big news out there in the vol space of the much ballyhooed, sometimes a little bit contentious return of effectively new flavors of XIV and TVIX. So I'm curious for you, product guy that you are, what are your thoughts that SEC approved going back to this well? And what are your thoughts on these new incarnations of these products? You think they've made enough tweaks to prevent a rehash of Volmageddon, sir?
Oh, that's a tricky, loaded question right there.
That's why I get the big bucks, sir. I'm turning up the heat. We're going 60-minute style now.
Yeah, so in concept, I think those are, they're excellent products. They were very actively traded, but obviously they did get a pretty bad black eye. And so, the regulator took a long time with Volatility Shares, the company that's launching both those products, to make sure that the same sort of thing wasn't going to happen again. I guess you could never say never, but certainly there's no doubt that the Commission has put a lot of time and energy working with the folks at Volatility Shares to do things that give them comfort. So the fact that it has been reinitiated or allowed really does speak to the fact that these guys must have put their heads together and it's taken them quite some time, but it seems like they've reached an outcome where they're happy with it. So I think from a product point of view, those two were extremely interesting products, and probably amongst the most actively traded in the whole space. So yeah, I certainly wish them well, and I think that a lot of people will be pleased to see the product, and only time will tell, I guess, to see how it goes. But it's an exciting development.
What's next, of course, X-Spikes, right? That's what we're working on now. The next bit of homework you got, Simon. If the other stuff we gave you today wasn't enough, X-Spikes coming to a trading platform near you. As we keep on rolling, another product you folks like to fade, UVXY, coming into the start of the show. It had a little bit of its fade on, but it was mostly kind of a lost week for this one as well. It was down not quite half a point, about 0.4 of a point from where it was this time last week. ADV also taking a break this week as well, down about 10,000 to 171,000 out there. And you can see why today, not exactly a ton of paper lighting up the tape, only 103,000 contracts out there. We'll do a quick top 5. We don't need to do a top 10 in UVXY. I'm pleased to say no pre-split adjusted names remaining in the top 5 here in UVXY. Those have all been kicked to the curb out here. Number 5, 10,000 of the, by the way, 60-40 calls to puts in UVXY in the top 10, by the way, listeners, if you're wondering. Number 5 out here, UVXY, 10,400 of the October expiring today, 15 puts. Number 4, 10,900 of the 16 half calls also going out today. Number 3, 11,400 of the March 60s. Numero due there, 13,700 of the October 16 puts. Again, going the way of the dodo today. And number 1 out there, 16,700 of the Jan 75s. Once again, back out to my favorites, the 75 strikes. In terms of what's lighting it up today, it's pretty much a whole sea of October going the way of the dodo today. 7,500 for number 1 of the 16 half puts. Number 2, 7,200 of the 17 calls. Number 3, 6,700 of the 16 half calls. Number 4, 5,000 of the 16 puts. And the only contract in the top 5 expiring next week, the Nove 17 calls, 4,700 of those bad boys. Mr. Meatball, anything lighting up your tape or the tapes of your crazies this week in UVXY, sir?
Yeah, it's another one touched an all-time low. It's actually, I'm shocked these are up today with vol down the way it is. But VIX futures do have a tiny little bid, and that seems to be, driving things a touch. We've been all over this one, riding it down from 20, with a pretty steep contango. This thing has a trip below 10, potentially by Thanksgiving.
Isn't that crazy to say out loud? I mean, we just reverse split this thing when it hit 10 last time.
I know.
And now we're already back. Is this a record for how quickly it's gotten back to the 10 handle from a reverse split?
UVXY has. VXY can do it. But, you got to remember, we're coming from when they when they reverse split, VIX was still, I think, in the high 20s. And now it's 16. It's been hanging there. We've had a steep contango. The way this thing has moved is, obviously, if you're bought it, not good for you, but it's to be kind of as expected in the kind of declining volatility market that we've been in.
If you're wondering, listeners, they announced the reverse split on UVXY on May 11th, and it actually went into effect on May 24th. So you're talking almost exactly 5 months.
How they botched that announcement too?
Yes.
That was great.
5 months, man. That's pretty quick out of the gates there. And we'll see. Again, it hasn't happened yet. We could see some nice vol spike, and we could see UVXY right back into the 20s again, listeners. But if past is prologue, recent past in particular, we could be flirting with that 10 handle again. Now you see why, Mr. Meatball, those 10 puts in UVXY have had a bid pretty much since launch, since the reverse split. And you could see why folks have been lining up on that for quite some time. Persistently so, maintaining that bid sometimes to my ire, but that's a conversation for another day. All right, let's keep on rolling out here to the land of single name vol, because there's a lot of it to be found these days. Doesn't matter where you're hanging your hat. Like on Monday, the name formerly known as Facebook. By the way, I'm not calling it Meta, so they can just forget about that. Now it's bad enough we got Alphabet. Now we're supposed to get Meta. It's going to be Facebook. Forget about it. But Facebook on Monday, we had Alphabet, the formerly known as Google. We got a bunch of princes in the tech world these days. Hasbro, Eli Lilly, AMD, Softy, Twitter, and Robinhood. Robinhood not looking so great out here these days. The darling of the meme wave not too long ago turned on its head, hoisted on its own petard, dare I say. Wednesday, Boeing, our friends across the street there, Coca-Cola, Mickey D's, also, ironically, our friends down the other side of the street. A lot of HQs right here for whatever reason. Spotify, Six Flags, Ford, the newly rechristened meme name out there, and eBay. Yesterday, Merck, Comcast, Apple, and Amazon. Apple, missing on numbers effectively for the first time, I think, since 2018. So yeah, it's been quite some time out there. Interesting stuff afoot. That's one of those ones was rallying all the way into the, seemed like they had the pre-announcement on the earnings and then taking it on the chin today off 2.5%, losing some of that luster, even though it sold off, looks like it sold off about 5, almost 6 handles there in the immediate blush out there. And today we have Chevron going off. Some numbers, again, you can find these for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab for more information on any of these. We've got hundreds of tickers. You could literally spend hours. So you are forewarned. If you go over there, you're going to invest some time. Merck was before the bell yesterday. 81.5 is where they were trading. They were pricing in 5.1%. Actually, they're pricing in 2%. They delivered 5.1%. So Merck leading the charge on outperformance from a vol perspective. Wow, that was pretty impressive. Ford, another one. They were trading 15.5. They priced in 4.9%. They delivered 8.5%, and they got obviously higher intraday listens. These reports, these move results reports, are kind of in the immediate offing right after the announcement. That's where they kind of capture it. But if you wait longer throughout the day, you have a different frame of reference. You could have more or less movement as a result. eBay was on the 27th after the bell. 77.66 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 5.5%. They delivered 7.5%. So still outperformance there. 3 for 3 so far. Let's see. Now it looks like we kind of fall off a little bit after that. Now we start getting to some of the other names out there. Good old Yum Brands. They're on the 28th before the bell. 125 3/4 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 3.3%. They delivered 0.8%. That's more along the lines of what we expect in the pandemic era out there. Comcast, they were on the 28th before the bell. 52.5 is where they were trading. They were pricing in 3.1%. They delivered 0.5%. So here we go. These are now the moves I've come to expect. IMAX, they were at 2070. They're pricing in, get this, listeners, 8.5%. They delivered 0.7%. That's a pandemic earnings announcement if ever I have seen one out here. So as a result, listeners, we came out of the gate hot and heavy this cycle. First week, 107%. Remember, Matt was on these airwaves talking up a storm saying we're going to see a rock'em sock'em cycle. This is going to be the green cycle. Finally going to see some green, maybe even break even, maybe even make some money, dare I say, for vol buyers this cycle. And week one looked good, 107%. And then it just fell off a cliff in week two, 55%. Just cut right in half. And then week three so far, 77%. So not looking good as the cycle has progressed. But hey, the season is still young. More names are popping off out there. You got big names coming up. Let's just look really quickly. Apple was pricing in 416. So in terms of, it looks like, that's the last 5 days. There we go. They're pretty much right at where their straddle was pricing in right now. So they're pretty much in line. Amazon, let's see as well. They were pricing in $123 out there, which is, again, just shows how rich some of these names are. And they're off $99.50, so a little bit of underperformance as well. And in the past, they moved nearly $150. So if you compare it to past performance, it's an annihilation from a vol perspective. Starbucks, they were pricing in $4. In the past, they've moved $4.30. Oh, they're a little bit of outperformance there. They're off 7.25% right now, or about 8.25 handles. So a little bit outperformance, a little bit of coffee vol on the tape, which is interesting. All right, good stuff here afoot. We can get more into single names, but I want to get some of you on the tape. Some big stuff afoot in the trading world this week. It is time for the volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, let's get to it. Got a good group to discuss this one. The news of the week broke right before our options bootcamp program on Wednesday. SEBO deciding to shake up the retail options trading world, introducing nanos. We've been saying for a while, it seems like the winds are blowing in the direction of some sort of a return of the mini, aka the 1/10 size contract. It just seemed like the time was right. A whole influx of newer, smaller size traders, with people loving fractional shares on the equity space. It just seemed like the time was right for minis to make a comeback. SEBO heard that and decided, you know what, we're going to skip right past the mini and go out to the nano. So forget about a 1/10 contract, aka a 10 multiplier. Every contract is for 10 shares. They're going straight 1-to-1. One contract, one share of stock, or whatever the underlying, in this case, is going to be SPX to start. I'm assuming we're going to have VIX, and eventually the plan, I'm sure, is for your Apples and your Teslas and everything else to follow suit out there. So interesting stuff. Mr. Simon, we'll start with you. Then I want to get the meatballs thoughts too, but you're our product guy here on the session today. What are your thoughts of a 1-to-1 nano option, sir?
Wow. This is kind of interesting because on the one hand, when in various products where they've tried to make them smaller, it hasn't necessarily resulted in multiplier in terms of volume. So I think there's a risk there for that. That said, your comment earlier at the beginning of this particular segment was about the meme stocks, for example, and you mentioned Robinhood and stuff, and that has been all the rage. So I guess I'm a bit mixed on that at the moment, simply because we haven't seen a nano contract, and I'm not so sure how popular that will be. I'm not doubting it, to be honest with you, but I'm just in my mind just trying to process whether that's going to be really successful. If you look at, say, something like the VIX minis and others like that, they didn't necessarily take off, but I don't think it's a crazy thing for the exchange to be listing, though, because as we've discussed, there are lots of Robin Hood-like things that have taken place in the last year or so that are very different than what the market used to be like. So certainly not thinking that it can't be successful, but I think it'll remain niche for some time. At least that's my expectation.
The product guy, not too enthused about this. You're right. On the one hand, it makes sense from an account size perspective right now. It seems like people would be into this. On the other hand, we just ran a poll of our audience just last week or 2 weeks ago where we asked, why did you start trading options? And over half, almost 2/3 of them said they wanted the leverage. And this is a product that there is no leverage. So there's a lot of things at play here. Mr. Meatball, I know you have thoughts on these. I know you've been champing at the bit to get on these airwaves and share them, sir. What are your thoughts on the newly christened nanos by SIBO, sir?
I don't understand the use case for these. I mean, who is the whole point of options? The whole reason why everyone's using them is for the leverage, and you are removing the leverage in them. So they're basically, I guess it makes sense for a stock like Amazon. I could see a use case there. But I don't fully get this at all. So that would be my answer. I have trouble imagining the use case.
I've heard if you buy 100 nanos, you get a package deal. What do you think?
I mean, if people get into this, I will say Citadel is going to have a field day with it and the market makers. So, a guy like Simon is praying for this thing to take off because it's just, he's sitting there chomping at the bit, thinking about all the free money that he's going to get from retail traders that trade these things, and all the ARB opportunities. But I do not get it. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I can see the use case, and again, it lines up with a lot of account sizes out there right now. But we actually put it out to you folks. We had a flash poll earlier this week. We said, are you guys excited about these? Do you plan to trade them when they launch? Which, again, they're not live now. They plan to launch in Q1 of next year, listeners. And almost 2/3, 64.3% saying no, 35.7% saying yes. Again, like Mark said, the devil's going to be in the details with these. What are the spreads going to be like? What are the commissions going to be like? If it's going to cost you demonstrably more to trade these things than to trade the traditional contracts in terms of slippage and spreads and commissions and everything, people aren't idiots. They're not going to touch them. So I could see why people might be a little bit hesitant given the crash and burn that was the minis experiment. But intriguing stuff nonetheless. Let's go to another product question here really quickly, Simon, since we got you on and we're having fun here. This one comes from Eldaris. I like that handle. Sounds like it's a sci-fi name. I like it. Eldaris wants to know, has anyone ever tried to offer a SPY or SPX delta hedged straddle packaged and sold to individual traders? Interesting stuff. I know we had the VOLATILITY guys on the show many times over the years, and they would maintain and argue that what they were offering was kind of effectively that. It wasn't the same thing, but it was trying to give you that same kind of realized return only done for you over the course of the day. But to my knowledge, Simon, and maybe you're aware of some esoteric product that I am not, but to my knowledge, I've never seen anything like this where someone said, hey, you buy this and we're going to delta hedge the straddle for you. That would be interesting, though, would it not?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's a great question from Eldaris. I mean, I think that is something that certainly I'm not aware of having traded before, or certainly not done it in a professional packaged way that you talked about. But yeah, I think this would be very, very interesting. Why not? I mean, if someone else is going to do the delta hedging for you, if I've got that right, I mean, that's a bonanza for a lot of people.
Yeah, I guess how would that work? You have to establish your criteria at the outset. You get so many deltas, that's when you hedge. It has to be very clear. It can't be like, I feel like hedging now.
No, yeah, you're right. I mean, absolutely, that has to be programmatic. You can't have something where it's left to the device of some other party. No, so yeah, I agree. You would need to make it extremely rigorous and rules-based so that there was no doubt about the veracity of what the hell's going on. So yeah, I think that's good.
There we go, Simon. Another new product for you. The T3 Delta Hedge Package Straddle product. What do you think? I like it. It's got a ring to it. It rolls off the tongue.
Absolutely, yes.
Get your Delta Hedge straddles now. T3 index. As we keep on rolling, it is time to get crazy, listeners. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball, the portion of the show where we get wild, we get crazy, we attempt to do the insane, to do, some might say, the impossible. We attempt to figure out what the volatility gods hold in store for us for the coming week. And coming into the end of the show, we have seen a slight decline, slight decay involved, but not a huge move. Spikes was at, I believe, about a 17.5. Actually, no, Spikes was 17.25 when we kicked off the show, and it's still about 17.25. So not a huge move in Spikes land pretty much at all. VIX cash, a little bit of evolution. It was right around 16.5 when we kicked off the show. It's right around 16.33 right now. So that's off a little bit, but not a huge evolution in vol here as we're winding the show down. So let's see what we had on the roster for this week. We had the Rock Lobster to the dark side there at 14.25. So no joy for him. Pretty much 2 handles away, or 3 handles away on Spikes, and 2 handles away, a little more on good old VIX. And then let's see, Matt Amberson of Orat's fame, 14.85. So he was a little bit closer, but still well over a handle away. And I was the closest this week at 15.75. So that puts me off about 1.5 on Spikes and within a point, but you're talking about 0.65 or so on VIX. So clearly not a win. I'm the closest. I guess I get that feather in my cap, but nothing within our margin of victory this week. Listen, let's look out here, see what you listeners had on tape. Let's see. Unlimited says 17.76 here. Let's see. No joy there. Options Queen, 16.5. Ooh. Wow, that's looking pretty good, Options Queen. Frank, 15.25. Nichols at a 15.15. No love there. JJ, 16.75. Not bad. Athena, 16.56. Close. You got scummed by Options Queen. She took you. 0.5. Super Vic, 17.42. No joy there. Munster, 15th. About a point away there. JBC, 14 handle. No love there. Mensa also at a 14 handle. 14.5. No love there. Todd, 17.75. A lot of people in the 17 hand. Allen going 2 weeks in a row, 17 double. Unfortunately, no joy there as well. Looks like Options Queen. Wow. Once again, Options Queen. You're going to run away with all of our prizes at this point here, but not bad at all. Options Queen. All right. So I was the closest. I did not go over. So closest without going over. Price is Right rules here. But I will allow Simon the dubious honor of going first this week because he hasn't been on in a while. And I'm sure he's champing at the bit to get at us. Mr. Simon, what are you feeling for this time next week, sir?
I'm going to go with a target of 15.5.
15.5. All right. And, Mr. Meatball, I'll be charitable. I shall go last. What are you feeling for this time next week, sir?
Well, you know the rule. We're always betting against our book. So I'm going to go 19-19.
Interesting. A terrible year.
But in truth, I think after non-farms, we're going to maybe be 14.
A terrible year for pretty much all accounts. A global pandemic, much worse than now. And, of course, the tail end of the WW, the first one. So, yeah, bad year. But perhaps an interesting vol prognostication. That leaves a lot of room out here. I could go all over the place with this, or I could go my own fun direction. Let's see. What is my heart of hearts telling me for this time next week, as our listeners are kind of all over the place here this week? Ooh, let's see. I think some erosion is going to be the order of the day. The question is how much. I'm going to say, I might go a little bit lower, but I'll just give Simon some breathing room. So I'm going to say 15.76. All right, there we go, listeners. Simon's on the dark side at 15.5. 15.76 for me. And the Meatball throwing out his favorite year in all of history, 1919. All right, everybody. That music means we got to bring this volatility party to a close. But don't worry. If you're listening live, just go get a beverage, hit the restroom, have some lunch. We'll be back in a little less than an hour now to break down the mad world of unusual options activity. Don't worry, there's some weirdness afoot. We're going to break it all down on options oddities in a little bit. But before we go, let's go back around the horn. Mr. Simon, we gave you a lot of homework on today's show, so our listeners all want to know, when can we expect tradable products on everything we asked you about today, sir? Go.
Give me a couple of weeks.
All right, you heard him. A couple of weeks. We're going to have all of these tradable and in our hot little hand.
Nice. Futures on everything.
You said it here. You made yourself a timeline. It's now your fault, Simon. And if folks want to check it all out for themselves, where should they go, Simon?
Well, you can go to T3 Index, which has a lot of the stuff that we are doing, as well as MyX.com. So both of those venues work.
There you go. MyXoptions.com/spikes. And of course, T3 Index, T3 Index.com for the SPILE. So, excuse me, easy for me to say, the SMILE and everything else. And all these cool new tradable products we're going to have, as Simon says, in just a couple of weeks. So that's going to be awesome. And Mr. Meatball, if folks want to reach out to you to debate Ted Lasso versus Coach Nate and everything else, where should they go? What should they do?
Yep, go to optionpit.com and check out our VIX blog. We write it almost every day. It is absolutely worth the listen and worth the read. Optionpit.com. Check us out.
Check them out. And let's check out what some of our live listeners are saying. Looks like 1685 with Luigi in the live options queen, and we know to go to her. She's saying a 16 right now. 15 quarter for Nichols, so he's feeling more fade out there. Frank 17 got all over the place. I love it. I love when there's a diversity of opinion. If you guys are listening after the fact, hit us up on the social medias or via the old hotline. You too can play along. And if you hit a bullseye, maybe some fun prizes are in store for you. It's just a fun game. Test your vol knowledge. Indeed, test your vol stamina. How much can you endure? This game will break the best of men, but try it for yourselves. And then send in your guess. We'll see how you do. Of course, we'll be back again later today for everybody's Secret Club Land. Options Oddities back again on Monday, of course, with the option block all the way through to another Friday, another episode of Volatility Views. We'll see you then.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MyAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MyAX is proud to bring you SPIKES volatility products. SPIKES options and futures are traded on the SPIKES Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about SPIKES at myxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.